It was H.G. Wells who published the novel War of the Worlds in 1898, but it was 23-year-old Orson Welles who used the story as a basis for a broadcast in 1938. Disputes in Europe at the time left Americans fearing a world war. Lighthearted laughter was never sought after or needed more. Americans turned to the radio more than ever for news briefs. The Chase and Sanborn Hour radio show was a much-needed comic relief. Chase and Sanborn hosted the series Mercury Theater on the Air. The poor ratings for the 60-minute series, however, were hard to bear. There was the need for a radio show that gave the ratings a much-needed swell. Orson Welles felt the pressure to tell a story that would only excel. Described as a jet of blue flames from Mars, this marked the start of the alien invasion. Many came out of their homes to witness this unbelievable occasion. The evening that the War of the Worlds aired is best known by youth as Mischief Night. By the end of the broadcast, some listeners were up for more than just a fight. The H.G. Wells science fiction prediction became, for a short time, nonfiction. The snippets you are about to hear were from the War of the Worlds radio broadcast, specifically picked as they related to Watchung and the neighboring areas. Here is a bulletin from Basking Ridge, New Jersey. Machines also sighted by telephone operator east of Middlesex within 10 miles of Plainfield. First, we take you to the battery of the 22nd Field Artillery, located in the Watchung Mountains. One machine partially crippled, believed hit by shell from Army gun in the Watchung Mountains. The stories you are about to hear are only a select few of the nearly 32 million Americans who were listening that evening.
It was the year that I was born, or just at the end of the previous year, so I only got to hear all about it because it was still fresh in everybody's mind by the time I knew what they were talking about.
What I remember about the War of the Worlds is that I was a very little girl, and we were taking a Sunday ride, and when I was a little girl, we always took a Sunday afternoon ride, usually involving a visit to one of our relatives. My mother had a lot of relatives in Old Bridge, and we got to, there were no car radios, mind you, in those days. We got to Old Bridge, and our cousins came running out and said to my mother and father, "What are you doing here? Don't you know the Martians have invaded Watchung? You better get right back home." Well, they started to whisper. They noticed that I was kind of in the back seat, and I didn't know what was going on. Martians, I didn't know anything about that, but my mother and father got right back in the car, and they were talking, and my mother was kind of crying a little bit, and we why are we going home? I remember saying, why are we going home? Well, there might be a problem. My father would say, there might be a problem. We have to go home and make sure the house is okay. So, and that's really what I can remember. And then I guess it wasn't too much longer that my mother and father realized that it was a hoax. But we were in the car, and I remember how panicked my mother, that's what I remember most, that my mother and father and all my relatives were so panicked. And why were we in Old Bridge when the Martians were invading Watchung?
They had on the radio, and it was, one of the most popular shows. I guess everybody on Sunday night sat down to listen to this Orson Welles show, and which we also had a youth group when we were kids on Sunday night at church, and it was called Christian Endeavor. And during the show, we always had our meeting, but we were sitting in Christian Endeavor, and all of a sudden, his name was Dale Flocker, and he came running in church, and he says, I wanted his sister. His sister was at the church, and he said, "We have to come home. The men from Mars are coming on Watchung Mountain." He said, "We got to get home. We got to get you home." was so well done that people that didn't hear the beginning of the show thought it was really happening. She says, calm down. She said there should be no other place to be than in church. She was trying to cut, all the kids were getting all excited and started crying and wanted to go home. And so that was the big story in Watchung. And the next day it was all over the news about this show that was on television. I mean, not television, on radio. And then they found out that it was just a show.